I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening.
Cheers! Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us on the Teakink podcast.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for being such an avid listener.
Yeah, I've listened to it a lot.
Yes, I get your feedback notes often. So this is Missy Fatale, a very good friend of mine. It seems to be a theme with me in this podcast. But would you like to tell us what Missy Fatale gets up to in the world?
So Missy Fatale is a performance artist.
Mm-hmm.
I specialise in burlesque, fire, snake charming, and fetish. So I am also a creative producer and director. I have an agency. I run the House of Fatale and Fatalism, as you know. Fatalism is a art house, fetishy, kinky club night. And the House of Fatale is a review, specialising in the top cabaret circus artists who champion inclusivity and something a little bit different.
Okay. And how long have you been running the parties and the groups and the...
I mean, I've been programming since 2010, but more classic cabaret shows, classic burlesque. I've been running parties since probably around 2015.
And you've been performing longer than that?
Since 2008.
Nice.
Yeah, a long time.
And how have your acts shifted over time?
So, I mean, my original background is art, so fine art photography. My original way of looking at the world, I've loved art always, and I've always tried to create my life as a work of art rather than having art within my life, curate everything. Sex and death as a main motif for the human existence, and all aspects of art is what really fascinates me and always has. Since being a child, I used to dig up my dead pets, set things on fire. My mum always jokes that I used to take my trousers off everywhere I went and set fire to things in restaurants. And she said, "So this makes total sense." So yeah, you know, body parts in jars as a child, fascination with the macabre, and the female body. Always, even from a young age, not necessarily in a sexualized connotation, but...
Did you ever articulate it to yourself, or was it more about the visual of things?
I always articulated it to myself. I was very interested in feminism and the patriarchy from a young age. I've always been, I'm sure we'll get onto this later, but I've always been a very naturally dominant person. And so growing up within a patriarchy felt wrong to me from the beginning.
How did you figure that out, that you were dominant and that it just felt not at ease with the surroundings? Like, when did you think that? Do you remember maybe the first few times that sort of came to you?
I would say I was born I think children are born and the character is already there. The personality is very strong from the beginning. And I was very confident, probably to a delusional extent from the beginning. And I remember being super young and my mum being in a park with my sister and I, and there was a man there with a family, and they were awful. The children were behaving terribly, and I just went over and I said to the man, "I think you need to learn how to raise your children properly." And I was probably like 5 or something, or 6, I don't know, old enough to talk, but very small. And it was not like my mum was on her own with 2 small children. It was not a safe. She was worried for our safety when I did that. But for me, it was just crystal clear. I'm like, this man is doing a terrible job.
Yeah.
And he's leading this situation seemingly, which is clearly wrong. So I'm going to say something. So, and throughout my life, everything has always seemed very black and white in that respect. So being dominant, or not, I mean, being very confident, dominant, knowing what I want, but then also existing as a woman within a patriarchal society has been jarring and raised a lot of questions from a very early age.
And so when you, for example, went up to that man in that park, and did he say anything? Did your mother say anything? Like, what gave it the context that was maybe not the best idea?
I can't remember because I was very young, but I do remember my mum berating me for it, because she said, that is not a safe thing for you to do. Like, I'm here on my own with you two. And so I suppose that message of,
you can't be you.
Not you can't be you, but to be a woman and to be safe, you can't say things like that, or you can't do things like that. And that obviously we all experience that throughout our lives as women. You know, if a guy's coming on to you, or it's a situation where you actually aren't that safe and you have to laugh it off, or you have to joke it off, or perhaps you have to
be artful and sneak away.
Exactly. You have to be
subterfuge, etc.
Yeah, and that's just fucked. And I've obviously done that, like all women, conditioned throughout our lives, and just got to the point where I'm just like, fuck that. Like, absolutely not. And sometimes to the detriment of my own safety, but it's just a no.
So sex, death, power structures, how does that feature in your work as an artist, in your work as a herder of performers? As a work as somebody who creates experiences and events? Like
100%, certainly in terms of my creative output as a performance artist. So my background was actually photography. I studied fine art photography, and we used to assist in the very early days people like Nick Knight and Rankin in that world, and then worked as a gallery manager for the Hepworth estate. I worked briefly in the V&A, and then came to performing, which was completely not my background, after a stint traveling when I was very young and just trying to explore the world a little bit. And it was a hobby that became a career later on.
A hobby just in like studios, you took classes?
Yeah, so I traveled around the world for a few years, lived in Australia, and worked as a photographer, but you can only do that for so long, so you don't take Australian jobs. And so someone just asked me to do a burlesque class, one of my friends, and I was like, I don't think I really want to do that. I did it for her, and I was like, actually. And so performance art just became another method of expression. And I think exploring ideas of portraying female sexuality, autonomy of my body on a stage with my own body as the vessel in a patriarchy was kind of like a combination of all of these ideas anyway. It was difficult for me because whilst I was very confident as a child and would perform, I would do shows, make all my family buy tickets and come to shows in my bedroom. But then as a teenager, that had declined. And I think that was probably through the coming of age as a woman. So that when I started performing, the hardest part for me was being looked at on stage, which is kind of wild now. And the act of becoming a performer, especially this kind of performer, I would say is super, super liberating. So your attitude to your own body and your own expression as a woman, you take more and more ownership as you go along. So, for example, when I started performing burlesque, and I began very classic, so very just for the fans, Dita Von Teese, and also for me then, I would wear full back pants and fishnet tights, and that was pretty extreme. I would show my boobs with tassels, obviously. And now, it's quite a departure from that. But it's so liberating. For example, the way you look at your naked body. I would not eat lunch if I had a show in the evening when I started, when I was in my early 20s. And now, I can eat a full roast dinner and have a bottle of champagne. And if I look a bit fat, then you can just suck that up as the audience because this is my body. And
you are lucky.
You're the voyeur.
Yeah.
And I'm permitting you to look at it. So.
And how does fetish feature in your performances?
So I've always been drawn to fetish, to the darker side of things. And
Like, did you collect books? Did you see photography?
Yeah, so one of my favourite photographers, for example, Joel Peter Witkin, who used to photograph cadavers and cut etchings into negatives and double expose, lots of very visceral work. In fact, the photography I used to make, I had a piece in the RA, the Royal Academy, was shot on a 5:4 plate camera. It was meat sculptures made out of dead pieces of animals and various other things, but photographed. It was macro micro kind of dichotomy, so they look like either beautiful flowers or spacescapes, or very visceral. It's I looked a lot at the theory of abjection, which is the human abhorrence of our own flesh, our own viscerality, like disgust of what's underneath this very thin layer of skin that's holding you all in, which is a fundamental disgust of yourself, which is a very interesting concept. So I examined all those kinds of things. That was the main focus of my art. And obviously, as I spoke to you about, I'm very naturally dominant. Like, it's just not an act. Like, it just is me. And so when I started performing, a natural way into that, or a more PG way into that, I suppose, would be the classic, the very Dieter Von Teese feather fans classic. I was super into vintage. I still do listen to a lot of jazz. And I was also a swing dancer, had a swing dance school at a time. So vintage was super
prominent,
but I was very drawn to that age. I'm not sure why, but where was I going with that? The darker side of things, the fetishization, to then start portraying that in the sphere of a stage, I really enjoyed. And I also think having a platform, having a stage, a public platform to perform on, is a responsibility. Not always. Sometimes it can be fun and frivolous, or just for the aesthetic or for enjoyment. But sometimes it is a responsibility, and you have to utilize that. So I do try and do that a lot of the time with empowering women through my performance. I never perform for the male gaze. I never perform for the men in the audience. I always try, especially if women, perhaps it's their first time at a burlesque show and they feel a little bit uncomfortable, I will always try and go and make them feel comfortable, make them feel special. And through my own self-confidence, I have women come to me all the time and compliment me in this, talk about it. But anyway, I digress. The dominatrix fetish content that I perform on stage, I think, is also important to show as this is me and this is okay. The destigmatization of sex is bad through religion and like capitalist culture. I think.
When did you first start? Like, do you remember the first act that you did that was along the lines
Fetishy,
of dominatrix
kinky.
or fetishy?
Yeah, it's my Domina act, which is, oh my God, that would be probably, I'd say 2014 maybe. And at the time, it was very, obviously the Torture Garden existed and lots of those kind of more fetishy latex acts. But within the burlesque community and the more kind of dinner cabaret show world, it was very unusual, pre 50 Shades of Grey and all that kind of thing. And it was it's a very PG, I get people out the audience and I dominate just random men in the audience. But it's very tongue-in-cheek. Hen parties love it. Like, women love it. And they find it quite groundbreaking, I think, some people, because they've never really seen that kind of power switch.
That kind of interaction. Yeah.
But at the time, that was considered really out there. Now it's much more prolific, much more mainstream in general, in the scene and in general life.
How do you feel about that?
I think that's a good thing. Obviously, some things get watered down through that and some things get raised up. For example, through the rise of social media, the performance scene in general has become far less focused on the content or the actual act or even the quality of the act, and much more on aesthetic. And, followers and sales, essentially, much more capitalistic. Which is a shame. But then in other ways, the constant clawing to be better and the constant seeing everything else has homogenized things, but also has raised the bar in some ways. So, comme ci, comme ça, I suppose.
And for your events, does fetish feature in that much? Actually, I will be featured.
Yes. Would you like to talk about that?
I guess so you have this party, Fatalism, and your agency, I guess we can call it, right, has been booked to book the House of Sublime, produce it for them, which is at the Wilderness Festival. And you've done that many times before. But at the last year's party, you had a dungeon of sorts.
Yes.
Is that the first time?
So I have the Vintage Arts Agency, which is the more corporate side of things that I curate events and what have you. House of Fatale is the name of the collective.
Of performers.
Yeah, I can give you these links if you like for the collective, but the name of the show. So it started as a review.
Okay.
And then that evolved. This was all over, but predominantly at Wilderness Festival, where I've programmed since 2017. Last year, I launched Fatalism, which is the first club night, which is art house, fetish, very gender exploratory and kink focused as well. So last year was the first one. I had dungeon pieces, rather than having a separate dungeon, which a lot of kink nights do, I had dungeon pieces on the stage and then oil projections onto the bodies on the stage. So that the objective of that was to have key performers doing spots. And then in between those, we'd have audience members coming up and a house dominatrix, which this year shall be you. So good luck, everyone.
You have to sign a waiver.
And then the people come up and they get dominated in a very gentle degree.
Are you briefing me?
No, I'll do that later. But just there's limitations because of the nature of the festival. So Live Nation have specific requirements for that. But therefore, through the oil projections on the bodies, I wanted the audience to become like living pieces of art as well. And obviously they're having this experience, but the decision to have the pieces on the dungeon pieces of equipment on the stage adds a whole nother level of voyeurism. It's not, you're not just in a dungeon and then someone might be walking past, but you are part of the performance now as well. So that changes that. The nature of something being looked at changes it, obviously.
And people were queuing up for this, right?
Yeah. And outside the tent, we had an hour and a half queue all night.
And how did people receive the on-stage dungeon?
They loved it. We had lots of messages. Wilderness received a lot of messages saying they're people's favourite thing at the festival.
Okay.
Expanded their minds. Okay. It was, life-changing.
And what did it look like to you as somebody who is familiar with play?
It looked like... it looked like giving people permission. Like normal, it's...
normalizing.
No, I was going to explain the demographic of the festival, but I think I'll just leave it at that. But normal people, if you will.
Average people.
Coming in and having permission to experiment with this and it being upheld, not as this, dirty thing, but like, this is amazing, look at this. And oh my goodness, yes.
Okay.
And all different types of bodies and all different levels of nudity. And it also being a safe space. So sorry, mess up your microphone. So we don't allow phones in there, for example, all those sorts of things. There's security. There was a cage stage last year as well with performers in that, and then people got the chance to perform dance in there. Unfortunately, the budget cuts mean that won't be there this year. But I'm hoping to launch Fatalism in London once this economy buoys up a little. So looking for cash donors for Fatalism. And then hopefully that will grow as well. So that's the more extreme,
club night,
queer-centric, art house, kink positive event.
Okay.
And the House of Fatale with that as well. The show underlines that. It's kind of like a Le Clique vibe, but way more extreme and hopefully more thought-provoking as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does fetish feature in your awareness, like your personal awareness? You say that you saw like imagery, and the aspects of power has been something that you have been navigating. When did all those things kind of coalesce to come up in your personal awareness of that you might want to have a look into it, that you might want to experience it, aside from the stage? Did it come before the stage? Or did it come after?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I've been wearing fetish heels and corsets and, spiky dog collars from about 13 years old. The aesthetic, PVC, latex, all of that. Dancing with fire since I was 15. My photography projects when I was underage were looking at, for example, John Berger's concept of the naked and the nude. Whether like a female nude could be like a Renaissance painting, but the inclusion of one thing that sexualizes her, that she then becomes naked and a sexual object. So you naked, sat on the sofa, maybe you're going to go and have a bath. You're naked Eva, just living your life, being a naked woman. And then you pop some stilettos on and you're a sexual fetishized object. How that can happen to the female body and under the male gaze, and the dismantling of the male gaze, which is pretty impossible in a patriarchy. But anyway, I think I just got off piece there, didn't I? What was the original?
It was like the
fetish in my life.
The aesthetics kind of maybe were an entry into your awareness.
Yeah, the aesthetics, power dynamics, just through my nature, and
did they come into the work before they came into your life, or?
I would say that was my life. Trying to look at art and my things that interest me as my life, things that spark my brain. I'd say I was pretty kinky, like in my personal life, quite early. Like a teenager, late teens. And I have experimented with a lot of different kinks and sexual exploration in my life. And it's interestingly, because I was so strong, I had to learn consenting submission. I had to really learn about consenting submission as an individual away from the stage. So, for example, allowing myself as a female to enjoy being submissive, perhaps with a male partner, just felt so fundamentally wrong for me to allow myself to be put in that position. Does that make sense?
I find it very
that's something I
unnatural.
had to learn. Yeah, I had to learn it and to allow myself to enjoy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't do it very often. Very few people, but
I don't know if I ever do, to be frank. Like, I mean, the physicality of it.
Yeah, sure. I just mean in terms of like
being pushed around a bit.
Yeah,
or whatever,
quite vanilla sex, if you will, but just the concept of itself, not necessarily in any extreme. That was difficult for me, actually.
It has to be particular people, but like I wonder about the mindset more than anything, because I guess I see a very particular mindset in the people I interact with as the dominant. I see their adoration and their release and their surrender, you know? And when I feel like I'm bottoming, I don't feel like I experience any of those things.
Yeah, because you can never fully let go.
And is that what's going on?
I think so. You can't. Also, perhaps that's just being a control freak in both of us. But it's never fully relinquishing control, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I would like to think that I would be able to access that, but it's not like much of an interest, and it's completely unnatural. Like I would have to put my brain in a different configuration or something like this.
Yeah, well, I think it's contextual as well, like depending on what and who, and it's also maybe the control thing is also about feeling safe to a degree. So yeah, I think
like I've been playing with somebody recently, and I mean they are very much. It seems. I mean, it's very recent. But it seems like a very much a service top potential. You know, it's like very capable, but it's also very service led. And they pinned me down, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna let this happen.
Okay, then.
I'm just gonna let this happen and see how it is for a bit. But I didn't really know how to react except to just like kind of stare at them, you know? And my body didn't really want to do anything but just be there, just be like processing. And then afterwards he kind of moved aside and he said, "You didn't like that, did you?" And I went, "I'm not sure."
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, what would somebody who liked that react? Like, how would they react? You know? And a part of me would like to be able to enjoy that, but I usually, if I fight back, I enjoy it. But I don't think that was necessarily the point.
I would only enjoy it if I felt super safe, I would say. So I'm in a lovely, as you know, relationship which is completely monogamous and really, I feel really safe and lovely. And so in that context, I love that kind of stuff. But if it were any kind of other context, and even I've been in long-term relationships where I absolutely didn't feel safe. And in those contexts, I think that's
when you would be triggered to maybe not be able to sit in it.
Yeah, and certainly not. Yeah, it's about not allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I think.
Okay, so the parameters need to be correct, perhaps. Yeah, and so when you did all of this awareness of kink and you're playing with kink, what point did you find out about female domination as a concept?
I don't know. I don't really remember, but I think very pretty young.
Like, when did you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm actually a dominant person"?
Oh, like from when I could remember thinking and talking. So I just knew. And my family will back it up with numerous anecdotes.
So their personality is not similar to yours?
No, my father, yes, in some ways. He's, very severe, no bullshit. But in terms of knowing what a female dominatrix is, I think quite early. I think maybe 15. And people would joke growing up, like, you should be a dominatrix or that sort of thing. So yeah.
And do you ever seek out that kind of dynamic?
How do you mean?
Like a female dominant, to like how I have on my dating profiles that I'm looking for submissive people.
No, like in my personal relationship, I just I want who I want, and I do need for my partner to have an understanding of, feminism and equality and all those, and to accept me as I am, as in a dominant person. But I don't need to be the dominant as such in a personal relationship. And then,
what does being the dominant look like to you?
The dominant, the person who everything I say goes. I think I have been that person in past relationships, and I don't think it, unless you are really, really happy in that dynamic all of the time, I think it's detrimental. And also, like, I want my relationship to be give and take. I don't want to be the one deciding everything and in charge of everything all the time. Sometimes I want you to look after me and take care of me, and or whatever it is. Like, and sometimes I want you to feel. I want to be like, oh, what can I do for you? How can I make you feel good? Like, because
I don't think that you have to. You don't have. You can. All right. I don't think that being a femdom excludes those things, though.
No, that's true. But I guess what I mean is I don't feel like I want that to go into my personal relationship. And for me, I want to keep that very separate. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
You want the definitions to just not take hold.
Yeah, I want... Also because my work life and my personal life have been very inextricably linked in the past. And like throughout these motifs that we're talking about, for me now, I try to keep them quite separate. Mm-mm. There's Missy Fatale and there's Haley, which is my real name, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know which one to use.
Yeah. I have Missy as a childhood nickname, so
both are fine. Yeah.
But
yeah, I have a friend also in New York actually who is like super dominant, and like even with all of us.
Laura?
No, someone else. But like very like mother henny, and she would be totally cool, but I'm not going to say her name, but she for sure will know who she is. But she also practices a very clear delineation with her personal life, even though everything that she says goes. Yeah. She just doesn't want to use that term at home when she has to deal with it so much. Yeah. It's like she's like, I guess, using it as a reclamation. So I guess maybe that's just more about how we use terms as opposed to let them using us.
Yeah, and I think exactly like terms or sexuality or the concept of fetish or whatever. These are all things that you can make fit to you and your way of thinking, your lifestyle, rather than just boxes we all need to fit into. Yeah. And so
at the beginning, it was quite useful though to like kind of have an archetype to explore, to see the potential of, but and to reference and to bring parts in, kind of like you don't understand what pink can look like until you have a version, and then you can start to expand on that. For example,
Yeah. I think as I was saying, when I was younger, everything was so black and white to me. Decisions. That's good, that's bad. I like that, I don't like that. Easy. But the older I get, the more I realize the nuances in everything, that the shades of grey, nothing really is black and white. And like no one's pure, no one's all good, no one's all bad. Like, and that's difficult because it makes some things more difficult to navigate. But it also opens up a breadth of possibilities and different colorations to life, I suppose.
Yeah, it takes a lot more time too.
So annoying. I like efficiency and minimalism. Yeah, this is exactly what
we are open to the grey of life, but we will stick with the clear people.
Yeah, minimalism. Marie Kondo is my god.
I didn't know who that person was, and then one day...
Do you now?
I do now, yeah.
The TV show's trash, but the book's great.
Yeah, but I was cleaning a friend's house because she let me use it, and the person who was also staying there was a complete mess. She was like, do you know Marie Kondo? And I'm like, no, I'm cleaning.
Yeah, it's a really short, thin book. You should definitely read it.
I mean, I've seen the show.
I mean, look at this place. You don't need to Marie Kondo anything.
No, I always go through stuff and get rid of stuff. Yeah, I'm very much only what I truly believe in kind of a person.
Yeah, only the best people, the things I really need or love, experiences. It's either a fuck yes or it's a no for me these days.
Even though there's shades of grey.
I know, but
it's something to remember.
Time is finite. So
fair. And the state of fetish in the performance industry, how do you see it now? Like, are there any famous shows? Do you think that it's some better representations? How do you see it going? How do audiences react these days?
I mean, these days, it depends on the context. There's all kinds of different levels of extreme shows, from like a very PG dinner show to a hardcore kink night. And I think everyone's just pushing the bar to make things more extreme at the far end of the scale. But the normal people on the other end of the scale are still very much mind blown.
Okay.
So I think it's just ticking along.
Okay.
I think it's become more prolific. And movies like 50 Shades of Grey popularize and perhaps water down these things. But it doesn't do any harm to make it more visible. I don't think.
And then people can find the nuance from there, hopefully.
Yeah.
Or it opens a little bit more room for those of us who live the nuance to speak, I think.
And to be understood.
Yeah, but it's a constant, back and forth about how much things are too simplistic versus how much can we actually give color to this. But I guess that's what things like this is for. Yeah. Is for us to color in.
And you get really desensitized in our world to a lot of things, and you think, because you surround yourself by like-minded people, it's an echo chamber, just like social media. It's an echo chamber. You think this is how everyone thinks, or
and then
everyone
you go
understands
to a
this.
vanilla wedding, and then you realize you don't want to be there.
Anything. I mean, the echo chamber effect. I use Brexit as an example of that. So, years ago, the person I was with at the time, who was not from England, I remember the night before they said, "Are you worried about the Brexit vote?" And I was like, "I'm not worried.
It's ridiculous. Who would vote for that?
Absolutely insane." And obviously, on my social media channels at the time, I'm surrounded by like-minded people, and I thought, "There's literally no way we're going to vote to leave.
Vote for
That's
all
insane."
of these inconveniences.
And the next day, and I wake up to the results of the vote.
Destruction.
Obviously, it was swayed terribly, but that was
Where does that stand now? Because obviously a lot of the ramifications have already shown themselves in this country.
Yeah.
Have people understood the choice that they made?
I think so. And I think, obviously people asked for a second referendum and it was denied. Yeah. And I think a lot of the people who voted for that will be dead before the full effects come into play.
Okay.
And it will be the youth paying the price.
As always.
Yeah. So I think people very quickly realise when they're having to pay loads of money for things and they can't go to Spain very easily and retire. Like, oh shit.
That was a bit stupid.
Yeah, that's a very trite example, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but that is when people realise when it affects their little decisions and their little lives. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so I look forward to being at your service at your next Fatalism party. Yeah. And I look forward to the brief as to what Live Nation will allow me to do or not with my life.
Yeah. It's going to be a very, very fun night.
It's going to be a very short list.
It's going to be a very long queue.
Okay. A short list of potential things and a very long queue of people hoping to expand their minds.
Yeah.
But thank you for being a bridge between us and the normies.
You're very welcome. Thank you too.
I just do it from the sofa. Yeah. I don't know how to do it out there. Yeah. Insane. Well, soon it will be a stage, I guess. It'll be my first stage for a long time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I used to do circus and I used to dance, like concerts and that kind of thing. But it was like 15 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. But it's not like super performative.
No.
Crowd facing, right?
No.
Yeah. It's more performative, inner with some voyeurism.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. But very raised.
Okay.
Yeah, the stage is, I think,
I remember.
a bit higher than
than before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Fun.
Oh, maybe we'll try to put some of the allowed footage online.
Yeah. The signal is absolutely terrible on site, but you can film it and put it up later for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to say that we've talked about that brought anything up, or anything that you hope for Missy Fatale going forward, or Fatalism, or the House of Fatale, or so many things? Or London?
Not so much London. I think I'm I'm going to retire somewhere warm.
Yeah.
Rather than London.
Yeah.
But I would say I'm probably moving towards the end of my performance career as I get older and look towards other things. So I'm going to think, I have actually one final act that I've had the costume for about 7 years and I'm finally going to choreograph it. But a very, a feminist last hurrah act, exploring ideas of gender and androgyny and dominance also.
Is it one person?
Yep, just me, but probably just a 5-minute piece. So I'm going to execute that this year and get that out as my last hurrah.
Nice.
And then look to grow both the Vintage Arts Agency, the more corporate side of things, and the House of Fatale, and launch Fatalism in London, as I said, once the economy's better, because it's really not the time right now. But I will be looking for investors, and I've got a partner in mind, potentially, for that. There is an awful lot of fetish and alt nights in London. We are hugely oversaturated, I would actually say. But I'm looking to do something different to that, with a focus towards art house as well, slightly different.
What do you mean art house? Like just
so making everything in there
like
a
an
work
installation,
of art, not just in a literal sense like an installation, but
like people
to make the entire curated experience, every pathway, every journey, that just to make people feel like that it was an artistic experience.
Would you ever open a venue?
I would, with the right investor, because for control reasons, I don't like the idea of someone else having too much control over my product. But I actually did think about opening a venue, and potentially somewhere abroad with my partner. We might be looking about slightly warmer places to go and do that. Yeah.
Okay. Lots of things ahead.
Yeah, lots of
I will visit you at all of them as normal.
Yeah, obviously. There's been many countries we have been debauched in.
Yes.
And here's to many more.
And kicked out of. But yes, so thank you so much for coming to the sofa.
You're welcome.
And now you can listen to yourself on the podcast.
Oh God.
So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
See you next time.